Take
All
a
right.
sip of coffee is what I'll do.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, welcome to Fulfillment Project. I'm Andy Leonard and my Substack, and this podcast is all about exploring what it truly means and how to live a fulfilled life. If you get something out of the podcast, I'd love for you to share this episode with someone who might find it meaningful. 5-star, thumb up, subscribe at Spotify, YouTube, Apple, wherever you get your content. It helps that beautiful algorithm share our work to the most people. The goal of this podcast is that everyone can identify with and find fruit in the content. And I think with Rick here today, you're going to find some fruit in the content. If I missed something or if there's something to add, share it in the comments. And for those that want to go even further, join Fulfillment Project Premium, where I release additional resources that help you connect these topics to your personal life. All right, I think that's it for now. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. Rick Morrone, my childhood best friend, one of the most unique people I know. We met in kindergarten playing blocks. And here we are, decades later. When I turned 30 years old, I made a list in my journal of each decade, the most profound people to meet in that decade of my life. Rick, you're one of the few next to my parents that showed up in every decade of my life. I love you. Thanks for coming on today. For the audience, Ricky is not only my best friend, but very accomplished. He's the owner of Rick and Rico Media and Events. He's on-camera voiceover talent, SAG eligible. Rick, what's SAG mean?
That's SAG. That is the Screen Actors Guild. So I do some acting in my spare time when I have it. Yeah.
I'm such a noob, I don't even know. I have seen your work on Super Bowl commercials. I love seeing you pop up when I'm on YouTube and there's ads and I'm like, whoa, I know that guy. That's Ricky. Dude, seeing you show up is awesome. You're also not only on-screen talent, but behind the screen certified professional editor and producer. You're a musician, mostly known for your work in Strictly Fine, but I know you do work with a lot of musicians across the scene. And I think your day job is at University of Michigan Dearborn, serving those students in the video and editing department, just helping them brush their chops up. It's so helpful for students to have a practitioner to guide them along, work with them on the most modern stuff and like, hey, what's this look like in the field? So did I miss anything there? There's a lot there.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I tend to, pack in a whole lot of things, but no, I'm honored to be on here. This is a fun little full circle moment because I think, back going 15 years ago now, you were on my radio show in college and now we've evolved into the podcasting world. And it's really cool to be doing this. I'm a big fan of your show. I subscribe, I listen, I learn. I'm getting a lot out of it. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be on here and be your next guest and talk about some stuff.
Well, yeah. Me too, Rick. I learn so much from this. And these podcasts are one of the most fun things because things always emerge that you weren't expecting. And I love to collect those nuggets along the way.
Oh, yeah.
So, dude, when I spoke at your wedding a couple years ago, this is what I said about you. And you are the most authentic person I know. And I'll dive deeper into what that means to me. But like, is that on purpose? Are you purposely authentic? How does that work?
I mean, I suppose, I guess there's not really much of a purpose to it. I just try to be myself as much as possible. Whether I'm at work or whether I'm at home, I kind of don't really put on this. Some people have their work persona where, all right, I'm putting on my tie and I'm putting on my work face now and I'm putting on my work personality because they're afraid to be themselves, whether, they've got a boss who maybe judges them or they're in a position of leadership where they don't want to seem a certain way. I've got a team of interns that sometimes I'm thinking, maybe I second guess myself on some comments I make or maybe some decisions I make, but then I'm really just like, no, it's like, I'm me. And I'm Rick, and I'm going to be Rick whether I'm on stage playing an instrument, whether I'm editing video or producing, or whether, really, the only time I'm not myself is when I'm acting, and that's when I have to be someone else. So, yeah, that's, I think the philosophy of just being yourself is super important to stay true to yourself. And sometimes, that comes with every flaw and every imperfection and every insecurity. And, I struggle a lot sometimes with that. And, it's all about just rolling with the punches and just trying to be your truest, most authentic self with no masks, with no, facades or anything that is
Yeah,
going to
well,
sort of.
it ties into my article on the integrated life, and I don't think I said this in there, but you came to mind. And with myself trying to live that integrated life, it's like, and living authentically, people can only love you as much as they truly know you. So if you're putting on a face, they can't actually love you for who you are. And I think subconsciously, when we put on that facade, we know that, well, maybe people like me, so I got to keep continuing to put on that facade so they keep liking that version of me. But when you're yourself, there's so much peace there, because people that don't like you, hey, they don't like me, and that's fine. And people that like you are naturally drawn to you. And for me, when I work with my team or interact with people, when you're yourself, sometimes they help to file down those rough edges. And if I was faking it, I wouldn't expose my rough edges to them, and I couldn't get refined down. So I feel like it's a quicker way to hone and refine your personality. Because, of course, we're all trying to work to get better. The only way to get better is to be the best version of yourself, and hopefully surround yourself with people better than you that can give you feedback. And sometimes even people that aren't better than you can spot your weaknesses. Maybe sometimes they're the best at it. And
100%. Yeah.
you, through and through, Rick, and I'm wondering now, even on this podcast, it just dawned on me, despite all my prep and thinking beforehand, like this just emerged. I wonder if you planted the seed of authenticity in my mind a long time ago. And that's where this idea emerged of like, I want to be this type of person, because you always were the one that people followed. You always are. Like when we gig together, you're the guy that's interacting with the managers. You're the guy that the band members are going to with questions, with thoughts. When you're in the studio, it's, hey, Rick, how are we going to do this? When are we going to start this? What's the hook here? Do you purposely, are you purposely trying to be the leader, or do you just naturally kind of rise to the top?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, well, first, I think, to take a step back, I think the desire to be liked is true in a lot of us. I think you don't want to just walk around being the guy that everybody thinks is a big jerk or whatever, or like, and so being authentic and likable is important, I think, in our life. And when it comes to a business sense, I think, or leadership roles, I don't know. I was a younger sibling, and I had younger cousins, and I kind of felt like I always like wanted to, be a shepherd and sort of like, corral them and into, doing whatever task or whatever fun activity we were doing. And I think, I don't know, a firm handshake and a smile and directness goes a long way. And depending on, a group of, creative people, especially, sometimes those traits aren't always, they don't always come natural to folks. Some of the most talented creatives I've ever worked with, have mad social anxiety where they can't have a conversation with someone
Yeah.
who's,
Yeah.
not a part of like their group or whatever. Back when I worked in advertising, some of the artists that I worked with were just that. They were artists, they were brilliant, and they just stuck to their thing. And if someone came and knocked on their cubicle and started talking to them, it was like they had, they couldn't do it. And so I think that part of that is the confidence to have conversations with people at a level of like, okay, if you're the venue that's paying me, and I'm the guy providing the service, there needs to be, this understanding that I'm doing my job, you're doing your job. If we just level each other out, I don't care if you're a multimillionaire and I'm, a nobody. Like, we should be able to have conversations at like we're equals. And that, in my professional life, whether I'm talking to the president of a company or whether I'm talking to, a guy wrapping cables at the end of a gig, like, I want to talk to them with the same amount of human respect, and that I would expect from them. So that sort
Dude,
of always.
pause, bookmark. Remember what you're about to say. I feel like I'm the clown in a circus behind the horses, shoveling the poop into the bucket. Or not a circus, but a parade, rather. The people that follow the horses. Dude, Rick, I'm following behind you, just scooping up these nuggets of wisdom. Like, you're talking to the president of a business, interviewing, doing something, talking to him eye to eye, firm handshake. But then there's the guy who's rapping the chords that's plugged into the video monitor, recording the thing, and you treat him with the same respect. I think that's something anyone can get caught up in, is it's nice to feel like the head honcho. But that doesn't mean that you can't interact with people eye to eye, no matter what their position is. I don't know a better way to say eye to eye, to just respect them and see their humanity, appreciate that they came from somewhere, that they're going somewhere. They've got dreams too, just like we do, struggles just like we do. And they happen to be the one rapping the chords today, but tomorrow that could be me. And I'm hoping somebody else is given back in a similar way. So sorry to pause. I just thought
No.
that's a brilliant thing that you do so naturally. And a lot of people need to be intentional about not just avoiding the waitress or avoiding the valet, but like look them in the eye, say thank you. The drive-through people, some of my favorite, I like to blow drive-through people's minds because I engage them, I look them in the eye, and I've gotten some amazing responses before. Like, no one's ever talked to me before. No one ever looks in my eyes. Thank you for saying thank you. Like, I've never had anyone tell me they were living their best day ever. Like, people don't say that type of stuff. And you're so natural at it, Rick.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, and well, it came with a little bit of like professional training because, like working with celebrities, for example, I've worked with a small handful of celebrities that when you see them in person, on a set, like you're shooting a commercial and you've always seen them on TV or you've seen them, growing up or whatever, and you were always just starstruck. And you have to have that level of professionalism that is like, you gotta just, you're doing a job, they're doing a job, they're getting paid to whatever feature on this commercial. And when you talk to them like they're humans and not like they're these machines of the system or whatever, you really, you connect with them. And the few times that I have worked with, like whatever A-list, B-list celebrities, I always try to make a connection with them so that they might remember me one day if I ever run into him again. And, not just being like, that guy. But there's been a few times where you get a celebrity who thinks they're above everybody. And those are the ones that I try to crack. And if I can't crack, then I don't spend too much time on it,
Dude, yeah, I think of you taking a ball in the gut from Barry Sanders, you walking
Yes.
up to Dennis Rodman at another event, giving him a CD of a song you wrote named after him, which is a
Yeah.
dope song. If you haven't heard it, people, Spotify, Dennis Rodman, Strictly Fine. The Worm. So, oh my gosh, you're so good. But along the lines of intentionality, so something that's unique is, at least for me, I identify things in people like you and like everyone I interact with. They do something better than I do. And it's like, I want that trait. Oh, but I'm not naturally that way. And something I think you just said that I agree with is you can identify traits you want and you can hone them and work on them. Like for me, an example was swearing. I used to swear all the time because I was loose and lazy. And that's not the reason everyone swears, but that's the reason I swore. And I decided that after encountering people that didn't swear, it just kind of is impressive to be around someone that's emphatic, that's passionate, but they don't curse. And I thought, I want to be the type of guy that doesn't swear. So I started practicing. And like naturally at first, it was really hard, but I caught myself. I was aware of it now. And slowly over time, made progress to the point where one day I swore and someone at work said, Andy, I didn't know you spoke like that. And it dawned on me like, oh my gosh, I've made so much progress on this thing I've been working on that now that's the way people identify me, as like a person that doesn't curse. And now the people around me are kind of lifting up and emboldening me in that characteristic I want to have, which makes it easier when people have expectations around you. So I think just because we aren't away, that's another Rick wisdom nugget. Just because you're not away, you can become away with work and effort. And like, just because you aren't something doesn't mean you can't be something with work. And if you know somebody that has that trait that's really good at it, I think there's no better way to flatter someone than to DM them, text them, call them, email, and say, hey, I noticed this about you. I really admire it. Would you have 10 minutes to talk me through it? Can you grab a coffee, breakfast with me, talk me through it? I think that'd be a great way to spark up a mentorship, a friendship, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe they just connect with you one time and you get what you need, or nothing, but at least you pursued it. I think that's a win-win-win right there.
Yeah, 1000%, 1000%. And one of your themes on your podcast that I take home is the thought of mentorship. It makes me think about who were some of my biggest, not just influences in one field or another, but guys who took the time um, to help me like hone that craft in, and who, would call out my would call out my insecurities or my flaws or whatever, and help me sort of craft them. And with the various things I do, I have a lot of, mentors that I can point directly back to and say, this guy really helped me and really inspired me and took
Yeah.
the time to say, hey, you're doing good, but you're doing this wrong, and you should work on that.
And you come from a really strong Italian family, so that's built in. I mean, I know your dad very well, Rick Sr. He's the man. I know both of your grandparents, sets of grandparents, amazing people built in. So what a gift, first of all, to have that built in. And I know you have a little daughter. So I think as I've become a father, the only way to pay our parents and our grandparents back and all the people that have poured into us is to pay it forward. Like, there's no way to give back. And once you become a parent, you recognize, like, you can't pay me back for these sleepless nights. You can't pay me back for these diapers. You can't pay me back for the patience when you're doing all the things you're doing and I'm just smiling and loving you through it all. So to have that as a foundation and then extend it into the professional world is really neat. Most people, well, not most, but some people, I wonder, they don't get that at home. So now you're starting from zero or less than you started with, but you can still find those role models, those parent figures, as John Farmer said in another episode. Like, most people have a father figure, and for everyone, it's not their father, but everyone can find that person somewhere because
Yeah,
people
that
are
really,
dying to pour in.
yeah. And that was another thing that struck me on the John and Weston episode, was that not all of us are lucky enough to have grown up with a good supportive father. And some people find that mentorship and father figure later in life or earlier in life. You and I are very lucky to have been raised by great dads. And I think a lot of these like principles and morals and things that we're talking about here come from, a strong father figure. And that theme of, I keep latching onto the theme of who is the man you seek to become,
Yeah.
And I think the man I seek to become is a little bit of a combination of, my father and my grandfathers. I had two amazing grandfathers as well that helped shape and mold me to the man that I am today. And I was kind of the only grandson for a good, I think 15 years, until the next grandson came along. And so
Boys
they
swimming in the world of girls.
yeah, and so they spent a lot of time, kind of all hammering in to me, this skill set or this idea or this, this little phrase or whatever. And that was kind of, when we talk about fundamental lessons, I mean, my grandfather on my Italian side, Enrico, he always kind of had his, isms, and he was very, hardworking, very, he came to this country and built, a wonderful family, and, really instilled a lot of that hard work ethic into my dad, which then sort of trickled down to me. And, but we all kind of do it in our own ways. Right. And, you know, uh, like, I think one of the things my dad said to me was, the more things you add to your plate, the more time you find to do them. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing with a guy who, like me, who has like these skill sets that I'm generating income and work from many different avenues. And sometimes that takes a toll on my sanity a little bit. But one other thing that he instilled in me was really seeing a project through, and never sort of like leaving loose ends in a project. Like, one of the most satisfying things you can have is the feeling of that accomplishment.
Oh yeah.
and to see a project, finish through with all
Like
that
making
being
beautiful, spicy Italian sausage on your grandmother's table in the basement. What
amen.
an accomplishment. One of a million, but
Oh yeah, the culinary expertise has always been a passion and, a love of mine and a hobby of mine. I was never able to make food become a stream of income, but I sure love making food.
not yet, dude. Not yet. You've got ideas out there. I think you can do it.
Yeah, maybe. We'll
But
see.
talking about fundamental ideas and your dad's thought about the more you say yes to, the more you can achieve, paraphrasing. My mom always said, if you want to get something done, give it to someone who's busy. And I've recognized that in my life where, like, when I'm cranking, when I've got a full schedule, if someone throws something else at me, I rip it out, dude. I'm already engaged, I'm already energized, and I do it. And on other days, and I think we've all had these days when it's kind of a slow day, not much to do. There's like one thing kind of you got to do, but it doesn't have to get done today. Maybe it could be done tomorrow. And you end up at the end of that day, you're like, what did I do today?
Yeah. Easy
You
to
know,
put those off when they don't like get, when they're not a gear into the system of like your to-do lists and your day.
big time. So building habits and rituals where you constantly have things going on, I think you build, I would say, like you build your personal business to manage that. You have the systems in place and you can scale up in your personal life to manage more and more. And as you need additional resources, you bring them in. And as additional resources become not needed, you figure out how to filter them out. And that just like the complexity of life gets so much greater. Thinking back to high school or college when you feel like I couldn't be more busy. You talk to a college kid and the woe is me. They have so much going on. They have a test in 2 days and a party on Saturday. And it's like, I used to feel that way, and now you look at your life, Rick, with all the gig schedule you have going on, everything you manage, the hundreds of people in your environment that you have plates spinning with. And it's like, what I would give for a test in 2 days, a basketball game this weekend, and a party that night.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In college, it felt like there was just so much on your plate, and now we talk about it as guys in our mid 30s, and we could run circles around that schedule. But you had to get through those points to get to the point where we are now that we have the confidence, because those are like your training wheels of how to multitask, and
Yeah, great
how
point.
to get how to get through whatever 18 credits of class with extracurriculars and trying to have a social life and trying to have relationships and friendships, romantic relationships, those those are all become the training wheels, the training ground of becoming a man and an adult that can you know that can juggle all those without going completely insane.
Dude, yes. And consistency is another common theme. And I think you just nailed it. I didn't make the connection again until you just said it. I'm just, dude, just scooping the wisdom coming out. But it's like, you do have to build towards it. And I think a lot of people can get upset and feel less than when they're not where they want to be, or they see peers or their parents. Like they want to start where other people are finishing. And it's like,
Right.
no way. Like our parents live in that beautiful house and drive that beautiful car. And it took them 40 years to get there. When they were my age, they were driving a beater and lived in a 2-bed, 1-bath, or whatever. And it's like, we have to work day by day, year over year, with good habits and consistency to build the things we want. And it starts in college. And I was kind of just making fun of myself in college. But like that was the most I could handle back then because that was the most I'd ever handled. And life naturally evolves. So I'm so happy you clarified that point for me.
For sure. Yeah. You pay your dues and certainly still paying a lot of dues and learning and building and growing.
Rick, they say that one of the most scary things for people in life is public speaking. And there's something crazy like, I can't remember the stat, but public speaking is one of the most scary things a person can do in life. And you do it all the time. Does it ever scare you? Are there ever any groups you get in front of or situations you get in front of where you get nervous? And if yes, like I'm wondering if you can help some people that are listening that get scared to go into a meeting at work or go on stage with an organization they support and you have to say some words. It's a funeral and you have to say some things, or a wedding, and say, like, do you ever get worried? And if you do, what are some strategies, techniques you employ?
Certainly, like earlier in my sort of emceeing career, I was more worried about stumbling over my words than actually getting up in front of people. I think, we kind of had training grounds of getting up in front of audiences, in our school talent shows and in our world of playing in a band and just having a microphone in front of your face um and now that I end up I've got an entertainment business where I'm kind of an MC and a DJ and a musician. Um, and it sort of now just becomes natural because you sort of have again paid your dues and sort of put those things in place. I had a couple of very good speech teachers in high school and college public speaking classes that helped me sort of fine tune those skills. I think I'm more nervous actually to get up in front of a group of my peers than strangers. Honestly, so I guess one thing you could think of is if you sort of think of everybody as a stranger that you don't really care what they think, it becomes easier to just sort of, do the thing, say the thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
get through it. I've had more trouble speaking at funerals because of the emotional connection behind it than I have, speaking in front of whatever 300 people at a wedding. Whereas maybe I don't have a personal connection with a lot of them or most of them or any of them. And so, my thought is, they're relying on me to give them the information that they need to continue this party. And so, if I jump on and say something like, hey, everybody, dessert and coffee is out, yes, they would have figured that out on their own. But for me to be sort of that voice of affirmation for everybody in the room is, it's like a responsibility that I take seriously. And if you're having trouble, getting up in front of people and speaking, I know that's for a lot of people, that's a terrifying thing. And I think we were lucky enough to go to a school that sort of just threw us to the sharks in that regard. It's like, hey, memorize this poem and say it in front of all of your friends and all of your school, no matter what they say to you on the park in the playground at
I
lunchtime.
was just thinking about that exact thing a week ago, Rick. Oh my gosh.
Terrifying, right?
I was so bad
Terrifying.
at memorizing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I still have a tough time memorizing things. I'm a little bit more like you, where I get a topic going and I'm able to talk about it. And you've always had the gift of gab. I've always admired that a lot about you. And I think I took a lot of my emceeing chops and just my diction and energy. You talk about you are what you're the product of the five people you spend the most time with or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, the average of
You
the five
certainly
people.
were one of the five people I spent the most time with in my life. And so I look to you as a mentor of sorts in many things that I do these days, because sometimes I literally ask myself, how would Andy do this?
My gosh, Rick, you're too kind. I mean, iron sharpens iron. You sharpen me, I sharpen you. That's the way it's supposed to be. And one thought, because I agree with you, speaking in front of my peers is when I get the most nervous too. I've been in a lot of different situations, but when I'm speaking in front of a group of peers, it's always the hardest. And one thing I started doing early on, I don't know if I stumbled on it by accident. I don't know why I started doing this, but afterwards, I always ask people, hey, what could I have done better? So I throw myself at the criticism. So instead of waiting for it to bubble up or hear it in the hallway or imagine what people are saying, because mostly people aren't listening anyway. They don't care. Think about you when you're in that situation. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you move on. But I throw myself at the criticism. And even after meetings, it's like the client or the prospect logs off or leaves. And it's like, okay, what could we have done better? And I always keep two sets of notes. And everyone I work with is laughing right now if they're listening, because they've all been through the gauntlet before. But it's like the meeting notes and then the notes of what everyone could have done better, including myself. And it's like, hey, if I'm going to give criticism, I want it back because I want to get refined and refined and refined. And you can always be better because there's an infinite number of nuances with personalities and situations where I don't think I handled that one as good as I could have. How would you have framed it? What did I miss? How could I have prepared better? How should we follow up? So I love your anecdote on speaking in front of your peers and some of those ideas. Rick, at the risk of glorifying people, because that's what I hate most when I'm on YouTube, is you see these people and they're glorifying whatever they're doing, running, lifting, exercising, speaking. They're entrepreneurs. Oh, 1,000,000 by 20. Oh, this and that. And it's like, maybe, but also suffering has not been a stranger to me. I know it hasn't been a stranger to you. Like, it's not all glamorous. You don't just, I mean, it sounds super glamorous. You run an entertainment business, you play in a band, you produce, you work with students. You have a beautiful family. Like, to someone from the outside, it might look like you have everything put together. But can you just walk us through some of the challenges along the way? And maybe not specific, but like, just talk about what it takes to achieve what you've achieved. And even, I'm sure you're struggling, right? If you're like me, you're struggling right now through things. And it's like, it's constantly like you're churning through issues constantly to get to where we're going. Or are you like, Andy, you're crazy, dude. My life is Silk Road.
No, yeah, you're spot on with the anecdote, or the idea of, you know, struggle in life is inevitable, right? Like, you're never going to just, like, just be 100% every single day. There are things that pop into your sort of orbit that, you sort of have to deal with, and get them, get them out of your brain and get them out of your zen, and yeah, I mean, I'm no stranger to struggle as well. And, the biggest thing I always look to is, when I am struggling, how are the people close to me, you know, interacting with that struggle? Are they supportive, or are they sort of pushing themselves away? And that can tell you a lot about your relationships when you're having a rough time, or you're going through some stuff, or you've lost a loved one, or you've you've had a tough professional hurdle or struggle that is really eating at you and sort of changing your mood day to day. It's telling about your relationships and who really means the most to you. And the ones who sort of stand by and support you and want to talk you through it, and because they know who you are, and they know that if you're having a struggle, you're kind of not yourself, right? And so there's been a good handful of times where I've had to you know sort of not cut people out, but just sort of keep them at a distance where maybe they're not the best for me during my struggle. Maybe they're great for me when I'm not in a struggle, but maybe they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
great for me in supporting me through a tough time. And that's okay. I think that, not everybody is built to be that perfect friend or that perfect person that is going to, be there for you thick and thin, but they're great to be around in other, instances. So, struggles sort of bring out the best and the worst in people, I think, when you're seeking, help and therapy for that. And, I think that everybody's going to go through tough times in their professional life, in their personal life. And it's really just a matter of, kind of getting your support system together, and sort of, reeling it back in. And then it's like, how you rise from the ashes, really, that sort of
Like the
speaks to your.
Phoenix, baby.
Yeah,
Rise.
exactly. And there's been a lot of times where I feel like I've hit like this sort of rock bottom, so to speak, in relationships. Or, I remember a specific time, about 10 years ago, where I went through a bad breakup, and I'm laying down in my house with like no furniture and just, echoes, and it's like me and my dog. And it was just one of those times where I was like, this is the lowest I could ever feel.
Yeah.
And looking back at it 10 years later, I'm very happy I went through that, like that low, to know what that felt like, and to know, what that struggle was, because now I can look back at it with a positive outlook of like, I had to go through that so that I could get to the happiness in my relationship with my wife, and, having a beautiful baby daughter. And I'm in this total different realm of life than I was 10 years ago. And it was
Well,
because I endured the struggle.
and I wonder if some people are scared to do certain things because they're afraid of failure, or afraid of the bottom, or like, what if this doesn't go my way?
Well, yeah, because it doesn't feel good.
No. And
It
it's
does not
not
feel good.
like in the moment, it's not a game where it's like, oh, in 10 years, this is all going to lead to something. In the moment, it doesn't feel like anything but pain and strife and agony and anxiety. But like, struggle naturally leads to growth. And like, hopefully it doesn't lead to lifelong lasting emotional pain. But if you're always too scared to take the risk, you're always going to achieve below what you could have achieved if you tried and you failed, you adjusted, you tweak, you make another stab at it. You're smarter, you're better, you're stronger, you're more emotionally adept. And that's just, I don't think that's words of wisdom, because I wouldn't like recommend someone hit a rock bottom, but it's going to happen. Like, it's happen. Everyone who's listening is right now thinking about their moment. And it's like, let's not, especially the younger you are, the more you can take chances. Like, I read somewhere or heard somewhere, if you're going to fail and lose everything, do it before you're 40, because like there's still enough time to get it all back,
Yeah.
So it's like, it's in your favor to take these risks and make these chances earlier on, which, by the way, like compounding and investing, like it adds up over longer periods of time the earlier you do it. So I just love to extract that point out of it. It wasn't fun. It happened naturally. You were trying to make it work best you could, but it didn't work. And yet 10 years down the road, you see how from that volcanic ash, beautiful trees have grown,
Amen, brother.
just amazing. I don't want to glamorize the people I bring on here, because everyone is kind of glamorous in their own way, or else you wouldn't get the invite.
For sure.
But it's like part of being glamorous. I wonder, whoa, this just emerged. I wonder if part of living a life like you have is the struggle and the failure. Managing multiple businesses, a lot of failure, a lot of struggle there. Managing a healthy relationship, a lot of failure, a lot of struggle there. Managing a life of success gets more complicated, a lot of failure, a lot of struggle. Maybe it's something inverted, like the more success you want, the more you have to fail. I don't know.
Yeah.
That feels original, but I'm sure someone said it before.
No, I think that's very true. Because it's kind of one, when I feel like I'm excelling really, really great in, in work, sometimes my personal life suffers a little bit. I spend less time with my wife and my daughter. I spend, less time with my family. I don't, like call my mom and catch up with her,
Yeah.
but then sometimes when I'm really invested in my outside life and in my home life, in my relationships or in my bands or whatever, sometimes that takes away from my focus and success in my work. And so it's like this sort of like pendulum that kind of goes back and forth, because you can't do it all, but you try to. And that's sort of I don't know. That's sort of like that circling back to that work ethic that my dad sort of hammered into me, is that to just always, work hard, see things through, and you'll get your, you pay your dues and you'll get your respect and you'll get your flowers, as they say. But
Yeah.
it's
Well, and to that point, Rick, I mean, this sounds basic, but this is like, maybe for some people out there, this will mean something. Like, if you agree to do something, you got to see it through. And
mm-hmm.
and if you're like, oh, I shouldn't have agreed to that, okay, that's a lesson learned for next time. But
Yeah,
this
right.
time,
don't
you
just
said
stop.
yes. And so you see it through. And if you told someone you're going to show up, you show up on time with bells on your toes. You don't cancel day of. You don't cancel. You're supposed to meet at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock, you send the text, hey, I can't make it today. Like, if you want to be a loser, that's the way you act. And I've done it before, and I felt like that's not the type of person I want to be. Who is the man you seek to become? Not the type of person that cancels on someone, because people have canceled on me last minute. They've told me they'd do something, they committed, and then they dropped out same day or even a week in advance, and now I'm scrambling. That's not the type of person. So if that's you and you're hearing this, something to think about, maybe call me an ass or whatever, and tell me I'm wrong if I am. But I think that's a non-negotiable in life. If you say you're going to do something, you got to do it. If you commit to something, you have to see it through. There's a lot of lessons learned, even if you don't want to be doing it, if it's not the best investment of time, but do it. And then next time someone asks you to do the same thing, now you're making a more calculated decision. Hey, I said yes to this one before, not doing it again. Or I said yes, I didn't think I wanted to do it. It ended up being way different than I thought. And I'm going to say yes again. And now I'm bringing a bunch of experience to it. So I love that theme from your dad. And again, not everyone had a dad beating that lesson into them. So
Yeah.
here it
Well,
is, Rick and Rico.
dude, yeah. I mean, that's such a good thought. I mean, I look back at like my dad wouldn't like, how many times did you join a sports team and you wanted to quit and
Yeah.
my dad was like, you don't quit. Like, you committed to the season. We got the uniforms, we got the thing, the season's done in 4 weeks. You're gonna finish this out. If you decide you don't want to play again, then that's the next time learning. But right now we're in this commitment and we're in it, and you're gonna finish it and see it through, and you'll learn from it. And yeah, so I mean, being a yes man isn't always maybe the most healthy thing to do, but I guess we talked about the other day, being a yes man, like as you're building your career, is kind of like you start to learn what yeses to throw out there and when to say no. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if I've really found the right method of saying no. It's something I'm working on a lot, because a lot of a lot of the work that comes my way is work, but it's fun work and it's stuff that I want to do, and it's stuff that I have rates for. And if I can come to the agreement of doing this fun job for a fair rate, then I'll say yes, if
Yeah.
it works within my schedule and within my life. But it's, I think we're approaching the time where we're close to 40, and being a yes man isn't always doable, or maybe isn't always the most healthy way of going about
Well, and
doing
I
it.
wonder a little bit if we earned our chops a little bit to get to say no. Because early on, I mean, this podcast and the theme of Fulfillment Project is coming from the perspective of a guy that's about to turn 40. I've grinded for many, many, many years. And I wonder if when you're starting, you're almost obliged to say yes to most things. Not everything, not anything immoral or anything like that. But like, you just say yes to get as broad of experience as you can to learn. And then over time, through experience, you have the stripes and you've earned the ability to say no to some things, or to channel your efforts in certain places where your natural abilities shine a little more. So I think early on, it makes a lot more sense to just be a yes man. And then as you grow, and especially as you have a family, like, time gets real skinny and you have to start saying no. And hopefully you've been a yes man until that point, so you know where to direct your efforts a little more.
Absolutely. And that's that was kind of one of the things that I wrote down in sort of prepping for this conversation was, and I think it was my mom's dad. We called him Pappy. I think what he, mentioned was, you can always make more money, but you can't make more time. And
Yeah.
so we have to sort of balance out in life this like, I don't want to call it an obsession with making more money, because money doesn't always equal happiness. Money can help you buy things to make you
Yeah.
happy, or to bring you happiness, but time is that currency that is just always running out, and you never know when it's going to be fully out. And so you have to value time over money as the currency of your life. And that's something I still struggle with, because I feel like I have a healthy enough relationship with money where I was taught early about saving, and I was taught, hey, if you mow that lawn for $20, guess what, you're only making 10 because you're putting 10 away.
Yep.
And that's sort of how I always have been in learning, like, how to save and how to budget, and always striving to, like, to get more and more and get that higher salary and that raise, and raise my rates for my services and all that kind of stuff. But and certainly, I don't want to be somebody that's a paycheck to paycheck type of struggle, because that can lead to just so much more depression and anxiety and things like that. And so to get to the point of being comfortable with my savings and with my investments and my pay, then I can really shift over to enjoying the time that I have and valuing time that I have with family, friends, just enjoying my life for not working. And I tend to work a lot, and I tend to have struggles with, I have that blurred line of, fun versus work, because my work is
Yeah.
fun. But, I have to, it's something I got to work on. I'm admitting it to you and your listeners that I'm certainly not perfect at balancing the money versus time currency.
I think that's a pendulum that swings all the time. But what you hit on, and I'm extracting, is when you're living really close to paycheck, or even you're there, or even you're in debt, you're forced to make decisions you wouldn't want to make. And a theme on this podcast is peace and fulfillment. And when you're forced to do things, that evokes not being peaceful. And so, the more money you make, the easier it gets to have that balance. Even if you make a moderate income, you can still live simply. Like, you don't need the things that are filling your life, because they're just stress. Like, those things are the visual image of stress, and you can live simply. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so long as you've got the food and bread and roof over your table. Like, I don't know, not everyone's going to make $1 million a year. How do we live below our means, wherever our means are, so that we can achieve what you've achieved, Rick, where we've got some put away, so that we get to choose. You get the ability and the peace to choose, hey, I'm going to say no to that project because I want to be home this weekend, or I want to be home tonight, or I don't like working with that person, so I'm going to say no to them. You earn the right by living simply to have more freedom of your choices. And I think that breeds so much peace.
100%.
Maybe I should say, I wonder if, but I think it does.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, that is truly, the title of the podcast, fulfillment project. It's all about, it's not about your social status and what your income is. And, all of that is great. But, are you living a fulfilled life? Are you living the life that, you'd be proud looking at, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, 30 years? And are you setting yourself up for that 10, 20, 30 years later? Because, in 30 years, when I'm in my late 60s, I hope to be, in somewhat of a retirement where I can enjoy, but I also want to enjoy my time while I'm young. Like, I don't have to always work so hard for my 55, 60, 65-year-old Rick. Like, what about 35, 36?
Yeah.
What about 36-year-old Rick?
He loves having fun too.
Yeah, exactly. And so you gotta balance that.
But dude, big time. You got to look at tomorrow without sacrificing today, and you have to build. And I like making decisions, thinking about, when I'm on my deathbed, what type of person do I want to be? And it's like, that helps to filter things out real clearly, because that gets, at least for me, it gets me right down to the essentials, and you said in 20, 30 years, what type of life do I want to live? Yeah. And when I'm laying on my deathbed, who am I surrounded by? What type of life will I have lived? And that's that'll get you down to the important stuff pretty quick, I think. So, Ricky, any last words? We're at 53 minutes. It's been so good. We planned for 30 and here we are. So, and I love it. And it just has gotten better and better and better. But any last words, anything you prepared you want to share?
Really, I don't know. No, not really. We've talked about kind of a lot of great stuff today, and it's been really lovely. I had a fresh brew at the beginning of this podcast, as we used to, we just have so many great memories, Andy, and I'm like, this is a really cool thing that you're doing. And, I'm excited to, be a part of it. And, I hope that some of what I said was valuable to you and to others. And even if it wasn't, it was a really good time just to, have my morning coffee with you before I get going with the rest of my day.
Talking about some weighty things. And dude, I love the callback to the coffee sessions when we went to different colleges, we moved around the world, and the way we'd stay connected was videos of us drinking coffee.
Indeed.
And because FaceTime didn't exist back then, Skype was barely a thing, but it was. But our time schedules didn't line up. So just film a 3-minute video drinking coffee from wherever we were. I love that, Ricky. I love you, man. Thank you for coming on today. Everyone, thanks for joining Fulfillment Project. See you next time.